Did you know that the Maratha flag flew over the Red Fort for 15 years? He acknowledges that the British conquered India from the Marathas and not necessarily from the Mughals. A lot of wonderful movies have been made, but movies, in my opinion, are more entertainment than history. When Aurangzeb died in 1707, this was pretty much the end of the Mughal rule, as was known.
At the age of 16, when kids can't even drive a car today, he actually captured a fort.
It was not a professional army as we know armies today. They were really farmers. So in the farming season, they would go back and do their farming. Afzal Khan left Bijapur, and it said that he had a bunch of wives over there. He slaughtered all of them, and I believe their graves are outside Bijapur, and they can be seen to visit to this day. He set out from Bijapur, and just to upset a lot of people, he destroyed the temples in Pandharpur and Tulsapur. On his way, again, we talk of strategy, he rode north to Mathura. He went to Mathura. All these guys were looking for him south of Agra. Aurangzeb tried to make him an offer that he should convert to Islam. Sambhaji was absolutely adamant, and he declined any kind of offer that Aurangzeb made him. And the end result was that Aurangzeb tortured him during this entire process. Shaista Khan went and hid amongst all the ladies. Oil lamps. They blew them out, and there was darkness. But Shivaji knew exactly which rooms, where to go, what to do. So it was just literally like a commando raid. The guys did not know where they came from, where they went. Santaji and Dhanaji, they fought the battle with the Mughals. And can you believe it? For 26 years, Aurangzeb is in Deccan. He's living in his tent. And 26 long years trying to subdue the Marathas, but he was totally unsuccessful.
Hello and welcome to Open Mind. Today we are going to be talking about history. As you may have seen, history plays a very important role in our channel. And one of the things I have noticed is that growing up in North India and following the NCERT curriculum, we were taught a particular history that quite has turned out to be incomplete at some level, or maybe even maliciously wrong on certain other levels. And back at school, all we got was a glorified account of the Mughals, while the immense legacy of our Maratha heroes was barely a whisper. Looking back, it now feels like propaganda, not real history. And that's exactly on this channel we revisit our past with fresh eyes and an open mind. Today, we want to talk about not only Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, the master strategist and guerrilla warfare genius, but we are also diving into the heart-wrenching story of Sambhaji Maharaj, the martyr whose life and brutal end recently portrayed in the movie Chhawa will still echo with emotion. And we want to wrap all of this up in the early story of the Maratha Empire, how it got started, why it got started, and why it reached the levels it did. Joining me in this story is one and only Kiran Ketkar, a man whose life journey took him from the high seas as a merchant navy officer to a lifelong crusade to rescue our lost histories. He has written a book, Swarajya or Samrajya, and it's a treasure trove of first-hand Marathi narrative preserved from our elders, our peers, Marathi texts, and other sources. Kiran, it's great to have you here.
Thank you very much, Kapil. This was my pleasure.
So give us a perspective on what exactly were the drivers that led you to write this book.
Well, thank you for the question, Kapil. Essentially, the way I looked at it was that, with my, I just love history. I'm very passionate about it, passionate about gathering the right facts. I had an opportunity from a very young age to visit a lot of places where actually historical events have taken place, and in my various visits to bookstores, I found hundreds of books have been written on history, on different topics of history. Movies have been made, TV serials have been made, but coming to specifically to history of the Marathas, there was not one book that could give you the big picture, the whole story. I mean, what happened? Maratha history to me is a period of about 200 years of Indian history spread out over different events that happened over a period of 200 years, starting, of course, with the great Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. And it went on and it ended Maratha history, let us say, with the Maratha defeat by the East India Company, the English East India Company. As British historian James Grant Duff, he is mentioned in his book, and he was a very knowledgeable person because he was there, an eyewitness, where he said that the Marathas were our previous conquerors of India. So, in other words, he acknowledges that the British conquered India from the Marathas and not necessarily from the Mughals, as is normally presented. And I put this narrative together, given on actual facts, what happened, and with maps so people can follow what exactly happened. And this book that I wrote was published in 2022. It tells you, it's really a synopsis of 200 years of Shivaji Maharaj. All the ups and downs, a lot of things happened. The Marathas faced external threats, how their strengths were, their weaknesses, including their own succession issues, and all this. So anyone who's interested in this period of Indian history will find this book very interesting.
To your point, I think the history can be told in two different ways. It can be told as an academic exercise where you bring in all the facts and figures, but it doesn't flow. It's just all very academic. Or it can be told in the way of a story where it can actually be used to connect with people. Nobody really understood the story of Sambhaji Maharaj till the movie Chhawa came out, right? And nobody understood some of the Peshwas' valor till the Bajirao movie really came out, although the movie was kind of depicted and the story was narrated in a totally different context.
Exactly.
So I think part of what we can do good for the history is also to narrate it in a way that it can connect with the common man.
Correct. See, because movies, a lot of wonderful movies have been made, but movies, in my opinion, are more entertainment than history. But the truth is very different. Real life is very different,
True.
and that is what I have tried to bring into the book. I don't claim to be a historian. I'm not a professional historian. I like to think of myself as a storyteller, that which I have studied the facts, and then I share those facts with the people.
I agree. I think storytelling with facts is a service of history. So I'll leave it at that. So talking about the establishment of the Maratha Empire in I would say, the second half of the 17th century. So let's talk about the context here. Could you establish the lay of the land that we had at the time with all the Adilshahis and the Bijapur and the Golconda dynasties kind of, vying for influence in the Deccan, and how did Shivaji Maharaj's father, Shahji Bhosle, how did he fit into this grand scheme of things that was being played out at the time?
Sure. Well, thank you. I think that's a great question, Kapil. So what happened was that, let me begin this narrative with the year where Shivaji Maharaj was born, and that is said to be 1627. Now, there's a little difference of opinion there. Some say he's born in 1630, but that's really a mathematical thing, converting from Hindu calendar to the present-day Gregorian calendar. But that's a small issue. The main point is that at the time Shivaji Maharaj was born, and by the way, he was born about in the fort of Shivaneri, which is about 60 miles from Pune. And when he was born, so what was India like? So in the big picture, now the Shah Jahan was the emperor, Mughal emperor in Delhi. Taj Mahal was being built. He had built this big new city of Shahjahanabad, which today we all know as Old Delhi. And Mughal Empire really was vast. It was well established for almost 100 years, which was the expansion took place in Akbar's time in the mid 1500s. So now here we are in the mid 1600s. So the Mughal Empire was established, huge Mughal treasury, well organized military regime, and all sorts of things that were purely well established in Delhi and Agra. And so the Mughal, geographically, you can say it extended from present day Afghanistan to Bengal, and from Kashmir all the way south to where is now almost the Godavari River, in Nashik, Aurangabad area. So that was the extent of the Mughal Empire. And south of that, there were three sultanates, or sultans. One was the Nizam Shahi in Ahmednagar. The second was the Adilshahi in Bijapur, and the third was the Qutbshahi in Golconda, Hyderabad. So now these three were actually the remnants from the Bahmani kingdom, which ruled the Deccan for about 200 years prior to that. But that's a separate issue. So at the time Shivaji was born, these three sultanates were in the Deccan. And Shivaji's father, Shahji Rao Bhosle, he was one of the Maratha sardars. Back then, there was several Maratha sardars who basically had their own small armies, anywhere from 5,000 to 20,000 people, cavalry, infantry, and they had their equipment. They were really there was no, it was not a professional army in the, as we know, armies today. They were really farmers. So in the farming season they would go back and do their farming, and in the fighting season, which really started after the in October, in Dashra, that was the time the fighting season started, and they would pick up arms and go do their conquering or fighting or defending, whichever was the case. So Shahji Bhosle had such an army, and he had established himself. And that time the Nizam Shah in Ahmednagar was very weak. So Shahji Bhosle took at that time he was hardly 8 or 10-year-old Murtaza, and he put him on the throne or the gadi of the Nizam Shahi, and Shahji Bhosle ruled as a regent. At about this time, the Mughals and Adilshahis in Bijapur got into a fight, and the Mughals actually came and conquered Ahmednagar, and they made a direct agreement between themselves. So basically, Murtaza, this little kid of 10-year-old kid, he was sent to prison in Gwalior, in the Gwalior fort, and Shahji was dispatched. He went to work in the service of Adilshahi in Bijapur, who then sent him to what is currently Bangalore in Karnataka, because that was the southern end of the Adil Shahi kingdom.
Right.
So in the meantime, what happened was that Shahji Raj's wife, Jizao, or Jizabai, she went and took care of Shahji's Jagir, which was in Pune. So Shahji went to Bangalore with his older son, whose name was Sambhaji, by the way. And then he took another wife called Tukabai in Bangalore, his second wife. But his first wife, who's Jizao, she stayed in Pune and raised the young Shivaji. Now, Shahji also sent with Jizao some advisors and so forth to train Shivaji. So that's the beginning of Shivaji being brought up by his mother with all the values and the concept of Swarajya. Swarajya meaning having your own country, your own domain, so you don't have to be subservient to a foreign power, and you don't have to be tortured or taxed and so on. So you can be free. So from a childhood, Shivaji had pretty much determined, and he got together his friends from the nearby district. They're called Mawals, and that's why they're called Mawlas, So these are districts around the region of Pune, and some of those friends, early childhood friends, became his lifelong companions. And that is when the quest for Swarajya began, when they took an oath in the temple at Rairi. So they said, let us now establish a Swarajya. And how they're going to do it, they probably didn't have all the knowledge that time, but they had the determination and the will to fight to create that Swarajya. So the story begins from that point on.
And they were kind of kids at the time, but I think looking back at Shivaji Maharaj's history, at the age of 16, when kids can't even drive a car today, he actually occupied, he actually captured a fort, right? Torna Fort.
Correct.
Could you tell us the story of that? Like, that's at the age of 16. How would you do that if you did not have like a full-fledged army and everything else, right?
So I think he did it more by subterfuge, and obviously, there were a bunch of friends, and yes, okay, they may have had a few arms, but I think he went up to Torna, which is not far from Pune. But he and his friends were able to eject the Kiledar, or the chief of the fort. His name was Inayat Khan. So he kicked him out, and he took over the Torna fort. Now, to Shivaji Maharaj's good luck, it is said that he found a lot of treasure over there. He used that treasure to reinvest it in arms and ammunition and expanding his own army so he could start taking more forts. And that is exactly what he did. And that riled up the Adilshahi. It got his attention. He says, what's going on? Because he said that, now Shivaji, his band of Maulas are conquering or taking over forts in a part of Maharashtra, which all belonged to Adilshah. So that was his beginning.
That is very interesting. Now, it's said in military adventures that having the economic and financial backing is as important as the weaponry and the forces that you have. So getting the start from the Torna fort and getting that treasure probably would have been, something that really sparked his future military campaigns.
Correct, exactly. So that is what there was no financing, there was no borrowing. Everybody was basically they're farmers, agricultural people.
So looking back at Shivaji Maharaj's life, there are some incidents that really stand out, right? Some of those may have been honed and developed from some of the early guerrilla tactics that he may have adopted. But one of the things that stand out is his encounter with Afzal Khan. So could you give us a little bit of context and tell us the story of that encounter with Afzal Khan?
Oh yes, absolutely. This was the episode, and Shivaji Maharaj's encounter with Afzal Khan was one of the life-changing events at that time, and in fact, it was an important milestone in Maratha history. And I'll tell you a little bit about it. So what had happened was that we mentioned Torna, and Shivaji took over several forts after Torna, and that got the attention of Adilshah in Bijapur. So he turned down and sent his general Afzal Khan with a huge army from Bijapur with explicit instructions to go and either kill or capture Shivaji, one of the two. So he says, so Afzal Khan left Bijapur, and it said that he had a bunch of wives over there. He slaughtered all of them, and I believe their graves are outside Bijapur, and they can be seen to visit to this day. So Afzal
Khan massacred his own wives?
Yes.
And why did he do that?
I think I have no idea, but it was something that before he left, it is like something like 64 wives, and their graves can be visited today at outside of Bijapur. So Afzal Khan set out from Bijapur with this large army, thousands of people, cannons, infantry, cavalry. In Marathi they call it Ghordar and Paidar, which Ghordar is with cavalry and Paidar is infantry. He set out, and to now Afzal Khan was an Afghan, so he was Afghan Pathan. He was a big guy compared, and physically Shivaji was not very big. He was probably 5 feet and a few inches tall, and Afzal Khan he could be 6 feet tall. And he set out from Bijapur, and just to upset a lot of people, he destroyed the temples in Pandharpur and Tulsapur on his way. He destroyed the deities, and he went up towards Pratapgarh. That is where Shivaji was, which is near present-day Mahabaleshwar, which is near Pune. So when Shivaji got news that Afzal Khan with his big army is coming, he sent a message to Afzal Khan. I want to talk to you, but why don't you come and see me, and I'll meet you at Pratapgarh. So Afzal Khan fell for that, and this was again his strategy. But he was able to entice Afzal Khan to come into the jungle, where he set up a nice big tent for negotiating, and said he invited him there. So Afzal Khan left his big army on the plains, and then he went up on the slopes of this Pratapgarh in the jungles, and where this tent had been set up for this meeting. So Afzal Khan went there in his palki, the palanquin, with a few people, and he went there. And
Was there any understanding that how many people would come with Afzal Khan and how many people would come with Shivaji Maharaj?
yes, so actually there was Afzal Khan had a few people, and so did Shivaji. But then when Shivaji saw all the other people, he said no. He says, I just want one person with with each of them, and who would not be armed or anything. So that's how the meeting was arranged. So Afzal Khan arrived over there first, and then Shivaji Maharaj arrived there in a few minutes later, and they of course they met and they hugged each other. And now Shivaji Maharaj went there absolutely prepared for the meeting. And what preparation did he do was, first of all, he was wearing an armor below his clothes. Under the clothes, he was in armor. Also on his head, where he wore his pagadi, he was also had a metal head covering, which protected his head. And so when he went and there was a customary embrace. And at that time, Afzal Khan sort of embraced him. He was a big guy. And then he pulled out his dagger, that's according to reports. And then he tried to stab Shivaji's in the back. But he was not successful because Shivaji had the armor.
Right.
And when Shivaji realized that, okay, this is what was expected to happen, Shivaji was no smart. He had gone prepared with what's called a wagnak. Now, wagnak is like tiger claws, which outside, on your knuckles, they look like rings, but inside they have curved. It's basically it's a weapon. Where while Maharaj was embracing, he could put these claws into his back and abdomen, which threw him off guard for a minute or two, which is enough for him to pull out his sword and make the strike. So in the scuffle that followed, uh, there was a quick succession. There was a guy called Syed Banda who was on Afzal Khan's side. And there was somebody with Shivaji Maharaj. His name was Jiva Mala, and they got into a scuffle. And in that scuffle, Syed Banda lost his arm, and Afzal Khan. He was killed. I mean, they chopped his head off. And when this happened, I mean, it was just a matter of a few minutes. And then the Marathas had prearranged, and they were all in the trees, and they dropped down from their camouflage. Again, this is part of the guerrilla tactics.
Right.
They were all camouflaged. They were sitting in the trees. They all dropped down, and within minutes, a big fight broke out, and there was chaos and confusion over there. And Afzal Khan's army was completely defeated. And Afzal Khan's son, who was there, barely made it back to Bijapur to tell his people as to how things went. And this incident that happened was a major turning point in our Maratha history.
So this is a very, very interesting story because this basically raises three very important points. First is that Shivaji Maharaj was practical enough to realize that there is no good sense in having the military just fight head to head against a bigger force. So he was smart enough to see diplomacy as a significant role to play in some of the scenarios where direct fight would not be beneficial to you. The second is like this entire focus on guerrilla warfare, especially if you're not as strong as the enemy, then you use tactics. And the third one is never before in the history of Indian modern warfare, maybe because it came with guerrilla warfare, I've heard of the description of Wagnak. And so I'm kind of like really interested, was that invented at the time of the Marathas?
I would like to say that it was something that was developed by the Marathas, because this is something that's only used in absolute hand-to-hand combat. Yes, and when you wear the Wagner, you can still use your hands for all other things. But this is the clever part, that if you're actually, I mean, quite literally, in a hand-to-hand combat, and this is what happened, exactly what happened between Shivaji Maharaj and Afzal Khan. They were embracing each other.
Right. The guerrilla tactics and the ability for Shivaji Maharaj to be able to react quickly to, sudden change in plans is pretty legendary. I think there was another story about Panhala Fort where he was able to, escape under difficult situations. Could you talk about that story as well?
Yes, absolutely. So here's what happened. So after this Afzal Khan incident that we talked about, so that was it. Shivaji became more confident, and his army became more confident. So the next thing they went south of Pune, and there's a big fort on a high hill called at Panhala. Panhala is now a little bit west of Kolhapur, just to give you a sense of direction. So Shivaji and his people went there and they captured the fort again from the Adilshahi Kiledar, I mean the fort general who was there. And this was about in June. So, and which is a monsoon season in Maharashtra, and the monsoons were setting in. And the Panhala is a big fort. They had grains, they had water supply, they had everything. So they're pretty much dug in for the rest of the monsoon, where not much fighting takes place because obviously with the weather conditions and the way the land is. So in the monsoon season. So while Shivaji was up there in Panhala with his people, one night there was a massive bombardment took place, and the gates of Panhala were blown open. And this sort of really made Shivaji think as to what in the world is going on.
And Panhala was at an elevation, you said, right?
Yes, absolutely. It was at the hilltop. And now, okay, so I'll just backtrack just about. So when Shivaji Maharaj took Panhala, again, Adilshahi sent his another general. His name was Siddhi Johar. He was Abyssinian, and he was from Kurnool, which is present-day Karnataka. So he was the so-called the general who was looking after the district of Kurnool. So he knew the region. So he took his army, and then he was aided by other sardars, some of them who were also Marathas themselves. So now they had surrounded Panhala in the kind of a siege format, making it very difficult. But Shivaji was on top, and in the fort in Panhala, everything was okay. He had enough supplies for his army for the last of the monsoon. And that's what happened one night when, with the heavy cannon fire, the gates of Panhala were blown open. And when that happened, he wondered what happened. And it turns out that the East India Company, who were stationed in Rajapur, so they had supplied the new cannons. They had longer range, they had better accuracy, and they could train them on the gates and fire them and blow the gates open. So this, technologically at that time, this was a big deal that happened. And so when Shivaji realized that he better do something about it, he in the middle of the night, he took his people and he escaped from Panhala, and he went to a nearby fort called Vishalgarh. So if again, this is another example of Shivaji making quick decisions at the right time and successfully executing the plan to be able to get out of there. So it comes again to the point what we said earlier is Ganimi Kawal, part of the guerrilla tactics. You should know when to fight, and you should also know when not to fight.
I think it's, in some cases, people say it's more important when not to fight than when to fight. And it's always good to be able to know when to take one step backward so that you can take two steps forward later.
You always live to fight another day. When
Exactly.
time is right, when things are in your own favor, that's the time to fight. Right?
And I think this is important because I feel that in the 10th, 11th and 12th century AD, a lot of native Indian fighters at the time lost these battles to the invaders coming in from the north, because they kind of fought only in one straightforward, simple way, which is we are going to just go and attack the enemy. Whereas the enemy was wily enough to know when to fight, when not to fight, when the rivers are swollen up, when the rivers are going down, and where on the river they want to attack from and cross the river and things like that. I think a lot of the smartness in the fight was missing in the native Indian rulers at the time. That was taken advantage of 200-300 years, 400 years before Shivaji Maharaj's time. And I think Shivaji Maharaj must have read his history well to understand that we need to adopt some of those same tactics.
Absolutely, because those are all the things. I mean, this is why Shivaji Maharaj is revered for what he is. because, like I said, he knew how to fight, he knew when to fight, when not to fight, and he made the best use of all the resources that he had, and not only the material resources, but also he knew the lay of the land. He knew the land, he knew the people, so he made best use of these under all the given circumstances, and which is what made him successful and into what he eventually gained.
And to that point, making best use of resources, including timing, right? There was this nighttime raid on Shaista Khan, which was also very successful, again, because it was unexpected and it happened at nighttime. Could you talk about that story as well?
Yes, absolutely. Well, thanks for the question. This is a great question, because what had happened was that when Adilshahi was now getting weaker because Shivaji was expanding and he was playing havoc into the Adilshahi territory by taking his forts and by taking over his lands, word reached Delhi and Agra. In the meantime, what had happened was, this is now the year is about 1658, 1660. In the meantime, so what's going on in Delhi was that Aurangzeb had just ascended the throne. He put his father Shah Jahan into prison. He was a sick man. Aurangzeb murdered his three brothers, as you know, and he became the emperor. And then when he heard that this guy, Shivaji, who's some guy in the south, was making all this trouble, so he sent his uncle, Shaista Khan. Now, Shaista Khan was the brother of Mumtaz Mahal, for whom Taj Mahal. So he sent Shaista Khan with an army down. Now, Shaista Khan was said to be an easygoing guy, so he came down to Maharashtra, he took a few things, and then he settled down in Pune itself. And Shaista Khan was living in the very same house that Shivaji had grown up in. It's called Lal Mahal. It's existing in Pune today. Now, he had, now obviously when Shaista Khan was there, the Pune city was emptied out of its residents, and they had all these... But what happened was, again, we come to strategy, we come to see how things, what Shivaji did. He came up with the idea for having a marriage procession come in there, and late at night, a whole bunch of people with musical instruments singing in a very merry manner, they entered the city, past the city guards, and they came right into and Shivaji knew exactly where to go, how to do it. He knew the city. All his people knew the city, but Shaista Khan and his all his other guys had no idea who these people were. They just pretended they were a marriage party, so sort of like a Marath. They came in over there, and they actually attacked the Lal Mahal, and there was a massive confusion, and. Shaista Khan went and hid amongst all the ladies, and the lights were, there were oil lamps, they blew them out, and there was darkness. But Shivaji knew exactly which rooms, where to go, what to do, and he personally attacked Shaista Khan. But Shaista Khan was fortunate in the sense he only lost 3 fingers. So somewhere wherever the sword strike hit him on his hands, so he lost 3 fingers, and then in the darkness, because time was very limited, time was of the essence, like they say. So immediately they got onto the horses and rode off and went to Kondana, which is now Sivagar, which is just south of Pune. So it was just literally like a commando raid. The guys did not know where they came from, where they went, but in those few minutes that happened, it was a massive confusion, and Shaista Khan was literally, he almost got killed. So the next thing he knew was that Shivaji must have some sort of God-given powers that he can just appear
from nowhere,
appear out of nowhere, and he can disappear, disappear. He can do whatever he wants. So there was all sorts of rumors, and then Shaista Khan was Aurangzeb. He was on his way to Kashmir, so he was frustrated. He called Shaista Khan back and then sent him off to Bengal as a governor of Nawab of Bengal. And so this was the other incident, and that really riled up Aurangzeb, because he felt that his army was attacked and successfully defeated by Shivaji.
Right.
So that's the Shaista Khan incident.
And something very similar also happened again in Agra, where actually Shivaji Maharaj was imprisoned, right? And he had to escape from captivity of Aurangzeb. Now, Aurangzeb and Shivaji did not have any good feeling between each other. They were pretty bitter enemies. And I think that bitterness is something that Aurangzeb literally took to his grave as well.
Yeah, it was kind of like a cloak and dagger kind of operation, because outwardly they sort of wrote nice letters to each other, praising each other and all that. But on the inside, they would draw a sword the first opportunity. So what had happened was that after the Shaista Khan incident, Aurangzeb sent another very large army down to the Deccan under Mirza Raja Jai Singh of Jaipur. He was Rajput general in Aurangzeb, and along with his man Diler Khan. So Jai Singh and Diler Khan's with a huge Mughal army came down, and they put their cantonment near the fort of Purandar, which is just a few miles southeast of the city of Pune. And so when Shivaji once again realized that this army is way too big and is absolutely, so then negotiation was the only way. And at that time, Shivaji had more than 50 forts that were under that he had captured by that time. And Mirza Raja Jai Singh and they started negotiation, and those negotiations went on for about 3 months. By the time the carrier took the papers to all the way to Delhi, and then Aurangzeb saw them. So by the time this response came back, this back and forth went, and that is called the Treaty of Purandar. Okay, so what happened in that treaty? Shivaji Maharaj had to give up about 23 of his nice forts that he had captured, and he kept some of the forts, including this main fort of Raigad, which was he had established Raigad. And Shivaji Maharaj agreed to go to Agra. And so Shivaji Maharaj went to Agra with, he had a huge entourage of close to 300 people. And they went to Agra, and he was received by Raja Jai Singh's son in Agra. And what happened in Agra, though, that when he went to meet him at the Diwani Am,
Aurangzeb.
Yeah, when he went to meet Badshah Aurangzeb at the Diwani Am, he paid his respects, and then he was told to stand amongst these lower ranked sardars or chiefs, and that really, he took that as a major insult, because he had come there as a king, as a from as a Maratha king, and he took that as an insult, and he sort of he said a few angry words, went out and sat down on the steps. Man Singh's son tried to reason with him, and so Aurangzeb realized what has happened. So he put Shivaji and his 10-year-old son Sambhaji was with him at that time, a 9-10-year-old, and they put him in house arrest in Agra fort. So he was in the house arrest. Shivaji knew right away that this is not a good situation, and he has to do something now to get out of that.
And Shivaji never suspected something like this could happen.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, after all, it's like going into the lion's den. And Shivaji took a chance and went to Agra, and now he is being put under house arrest.
Right.
So the first thing that they did, again, we come to strategy and the smarts. So when he had gone there with this 300 people, or so his entourage, he asked Aurangzeb, let these guys go. He said, now you've arrested me anyway, so what's the use of keeping these guys here? Let them go back to Maharashtra. And so they were given these, what you call a parwana, or what's like a little passport, you can say, that these people returned. So Shivaji now felt that he didn't have to worry about them being slaughtered in Agra.
Right.
So they all went back to Maharashtra, and now he's there with his son and maybe a couple of guys, and they were under house arrest. So he complained that he's sick, so he started sending baskets of fruits and sweets to the people of Agra. And at one evening, he got into one of these baskets with his son, and they carried him out. And the minute he went out, it was all pre-organized. He got on his horse, and again, we talk of strategy. He rode north to Mathura. He went to Mathura. All these guys were looking for him south of Agra.
Because the logical thing would be he's going to escape to Maharashtra. So let's try to find the shortest path to Maharashtra, and maybe he's going to be on that.
Yes. So he went, he rode his horse, he and his 10-year-old Sambhaji and a couple other guys. and they all rode north to Mathura. And they went to Mathura and they stayed as they changed their clothes, like sadhus and all that, and they stayed in the temple. They stayed there for about 2 months or some such period of time. They stayed in Mathura, and there he left his son behind there with the temple priest. He said, I'll come back later and take my son, or he'll come. Because he did not want, because Aurangzeb people are all looking for them. And they knew that if they see a father and son sort of walking.
It's easier to recognize when you know who are you looking for.
Exactly.
But if you're looking for one single person versus two, I think the risk
Exactly.
of being found out is
Exactly. And he and his few guys, they found their way back to Maharashtra, all the way to Raigad. And his mother was surprised. And even, in fact, when he came to Raigad, they came as sadhus, because nobody knew exactly who they were and what they were. Now, how he came back exactly is unknown. I mean, the road he took, yeah, obviously it had to be a very roundabout way, but he did make it back, and within 4 or 5 months he was back in Pune, or actually in Raigad. So that was one heck of a thing. And this event stayed with Aurangzeb all the way till Aurangzeb was 90 years old. He realized that one mistake that he did. In fact, the Kotwal of Agra, his name is Fawlad Khan. So when Fawlad Khan went there and realized that his prisoner is not there, he didn't. I mean, the guy was shaking. He didn't know how to go and tell Aurangzeb that because the next thing he knew, the sword is going to fall on his head.
Right.
Because it was his responsibility to take. But anyway, we don't know what happened to Fawlad Khan, but yes, Aurangzeb was mad as hell, because Aurangzeb had his own word for him. He used to call him mountain rat, Pahadi Chua. That was what Aurangzeb used to call him.
I think looking at the history of the conflict between Shivaji Maharaj and Aurangzeb, it almost feels to me that Shivaji Maharaj was literally instrumental in not only bringing down Aurangzeb in a way, but also, the Mughal Empire. Now, Mughal Empire did not really end with Aurangzeb's death, but it probably had a very long and painful death for another 150 years after Aurangzeb. But I don't think Mughal rule basically stayed the same after Aurangzeb was gone. Could you talk about the fact like Aurangzeb also camped in Deccan for decades? Could you talk about how did the conflict with the Maratha Empire weaken the Mughal Empire to the point that Mughal Empire basically started to become, number one, crumble from within, and number two, started to become irrelevant in Indian state?
Yes, absolutely. Because a lot of people feel that the Mughals were there up to 1857. That is wrong. That is clearly not the case. So let me tell you what happened after Shivaji Maharaj returned from Agra. Then he was crowned king. He became Chhatrapati. And then, unfortunately, he died a young man. I mean, in a relative sense, he was only 51 or 52 years old when Shivaji died. That was in 1680. And there was succession issues after that. But Sambhaji Maharaj took over. He was the next Chhatrapati. And in 1682, that's when Aurangzeb decided that, now Shivaji is gone, so now he should bring all his, and he should come himself and direct the operation himself and finish off these Marathas and all the remaining Deccan Sultanates once and for all, and expand the Mughal Empire all the way down to the tip of India. So, 1682, Aurangzeb leaves the palaces of Delhi and Agra, heads south with this huge army, and they cross the Narmada River. They come into the Deccan, and so then he sends some people to fight the Marathas, and again, the Marathas are withdrawn into the hills, and they are waging a guerrilla warfare as they always have been. So in the meantime, I think it was 1685, 1686, Aurangzeb defeats the kingdoms or the sultans of Bijapur and Golconda. So that's relatively easy for Aurangzeb to do, because he's got the big armies and all the materials, so called. Then, unfortunately, because of the internal issues that Marathas had, some of the family members of Sambhaji gave away the whereabouts of Sambhaji. And his when specifically it was this guy called Mukarrab Khan. He was the Fauzdar of Kolhapur,
Oh.
and he knew the region very well. He spoke Marathi very well, and and Shivaji's own family members. In fact, it was his brothers-in-law. There was some internal squabble, so they went to Mukarrab Khan and told him that, oh, we know exactly where Sambhaji is. And it was in a small town called Sangameshwar, which was on the coast. And so Mukarrab Khan went there with a large army, and Sambhaji was there with a few people. He was not there to fight. I mean, he was there for whatever reason. He was there in Sangameshwar. So Sambhaji was arrested at Sangameshwar, and he was taken to Aurangzeb. And then that is a tremendous story of cruelty and torture. Aurangzeb tried to make him an offer that, hey, he'll make him let him have a certain kingdom, and he should convert to Islam, and so on. But Sambhaji was absolutely adamant, and he declined any kind of offer that Aurangzeb made him. And the end result was that Aurangzeb tortured him during this entire process of negotiation. So Sambhaji did not have it was not a negotiating across the table or something. He was chained, he was brought in, he was like, they put on clown clothes on him and his cohort. There's somebody with him, his name was Kavi Kalash. And then ultimately he was tortured. His nails were pulled out. His eyes were with hot irons. He blinded him, and he also cut his tongue off. And besides all the other thing, ultimately Sambhaji Maharaj was killed in that fashion. Again, at that time, now this is now 1689. Okay, and again Aurangzeb thought, okay, now he's done. He should go back. But that's when the Marathas erupted again with, like they said, fire and fury.
Right.
They said, who are these guys? Mughals they have killed our king. And specifically, there were two Maratha generals. Their name was Santaji and Dhanaji.
Santaji
Ghorpade. Right. So they took up the arm. Now, again, mind you, there's no leader, there is no central authority,
right?
But it is just the will and the tremendous motivation that was given to them by Shivaji Maharaj, that you have to fight for what you want. Nothing is going to come to you easily, and that is what these two generals. And now Rajaram was the Shivaji Maharaj's younger son. He was the Chhatrapati, and they protected him by taking him to the fort of Jinji. Now Jinji is is in Tamil Nadu, near the present day Chennai. It's just west of that. So they kept him there to protect him as their Chhatrapati. And these two generals, Santaji and Dhanaji, they fought the battle with the Mughals. And can you believe it? For 26 years, for a total of 26 years, Aurangzeb is in Deccan. He's living in his tents in the heat, the rains and all that. He spent 26 long years trying to subdue the Marathas, but he was totally unsuccessful. By the time he was 90 years old, and the Mughal, he depleted his entire treasury, all the resources were gone, and his people are tired, fed up, and they wanted to go back to the north, because all the army, they left the family behind. They were all tired and fed up of fighting the Marathas, and they really had no. They won several battles, but they lost the war, so to speak. And they turned around. Now, can you imagine Aurangzeb, 90 years old, he's sitting in his palanquin, and he's heading back now, but ultimately he never got back to his capital of Delhi and Agra. He died in the fort of Ahmednagar, which is is in Maharashtra. And Aurangzeb is buried in a small town called at Khuldabad, in an open grave, because for somehow towards the end he did not want some lavish tomb like the other. Like Humayun has Humayun's tomb. Babur is buried in Kabul, and Akbar had his tomb in Sikandra, which is by Agra.
Yep.
And of course, Taj Mahal has for Shahjahan. So all these half a dozen Mughal emperors before Aurangzeb had all these big tombs built for them. Aurangzeb is just buried in a very simple tube that's open to the sky, and that's in Kuldabad. So, to make a long story short, 26 years spent, Mughal treasury emptied, lives destroyed, and Maharashtra was completely destroyed. 26 years of warfare, and nothing was gained. That was the nature of the Mughal, and this happened. I mean, Aurangzeb died in 1707.
Yeah.
This was pretty much the end of the Mughal rule, as was known, because after that there was a whole bunch of Mughal kings who were really up to nothing. They were not capable. The Mughal, they did not have the treasury, and they were all manipulated by kingmakers. And a good example of that is the Sayyid brothers who came from Lahore, and they came to Delhi,
Right.
and they were manipulating them, and they were appointing them as in when they want.
We are going to leave some of these interesting and juicy tidbits for the second part of this conversation. But this has been a fantastic, fabulous conversation. Thank you so much for revisiting history for us, and thank you so much for introducing the grand vision and the scale of the Maratha Swarajya, for that matter, to the rest of the folks like me who were not aware of this.
It was my pleasure, Kapil, and really, I mean, for all those who are interested, I would recommend read my book, Swarajya and Samraj. It's available on Amazon. You can,
And I'll put the link to the book.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Most welcome. Appreciate it. I enjoyed being here,